Imagine a cube 6 miles across, deep and high. Damn. And that's how much lava came out.
Forget the image of Yogi Bear representing Yellowstone. We're talking about a sleeping Godzilla.
Yellowstone Caldera is a breathtaking scene, but something dangerous brewing underneath will change everything. This caldera, once considered a sleeping volcano, is now showing signs of becoming an active and disastrous giant. Previously assumed to erupt in the next 100,000 years, it is now a big issue due to recent and rapid ground movements, which, as we know from the past, will be devastating. Park officials have closed the park, but was that the right call? Join us as we enter the Yellowstone Park Ranger, which has just revealed that something chilling has happened inside the national park. Yellowstone Caldera. Yellowstone National Park isn't like regular parks with pretty green grass and nice stone benches. It's quite different. Established in 1872, the 42nd U.S. Congress made a law called the Yellowstone National Park Protection Act, which was signed by President Ulysses S. Grant on March 1st of that same year. Often seen as the very first national park in the world, people love this park because of its animals and special hot springs, with the Old Faithful geyser being a favorite. Yellowstone National Park is really big, covering an area of 3,468.4 square miles. It has lakes, canyons, rivers, and mountains. One special place in the park is Yellowstone Lake, which is one of the biggest high-elevation lakes in North America. This lake sits right on top of the Yellowstone Caldera, the biggest supervolcano on the continent. The Yellowstone Caldera is the biggest volcanic system in North America, and across the globe, it's only matched by the Lake Toba caldera in Sumatra. People call it a supervolcano because it was created by really huge and powerful explosions. More than half of the world's geysers and hot springs are in Yellowstone, all because of the volcanic activity happening there. The land in Yellowstone is mostly covered by lava flows and rocks from past volcanic eruptions. People have been keeping a close eye on this volcano since way back in 1923. But recently, the hot liquid rock inside the earth has been making the ground go up by about 10 inches. After a while, this rise slowed down, suggesting that the magma was getting cooler and turning into solid rock. This was like an early sign to scientists who watch over this sleeping giant volcano that it might be getting ready to wake up, to figure out what might happen and take preventive measures ahead of this eruption. Scientists are looking at the last 3 big explosions it had. All 3 times, it caused huge and powerful events. Even the most recent one, which was more than 600,000 years ago, left big marks all over Yellowstone National Park. Huckleberry Ridge eruption. The first big explosion at Yellowstone was called the Huckleberry Ridge eruption, and it took place around 2.1 million years ago, producing 2,500 times more ash than the Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980. It was this eruption that made the Island Park caldera, which is partly in Yellowstone National Park, Wyoming, and stretches into Idaho in an area called Island Park. The Island Park caldera is one of the biggest volcanic craters globally, measuring about 80 by 65 kilometers. It created a layer of ash, known as the Huckleberry Ridge Tuff, extending from Southern California to the Mississippi River. Inside the Island Park caldera, there's a smaller and younger crater called the Henry's Fork caldera, which erupted 1.3 million years ago, shaping the Mesa Falls Tuff. While both craters share a rim on their west side, the older Island Park caldera is much larger and stretches into Yellowstone National Park. People sometimes call it the first phase Yellowstone caldera or the Huckleberry Ridge caldera. During this eruption, an enormous amount of stuff like volcanic ash, gases, and magma shot out, reaching a whopping 580 cubic miles. This eruption holds the record as the largest one ever seen in the history of Yellowstone National Park and the whole of North America. However, there are speculations that the eruption probably took place in 3 separate phases, spread out over decades. Mesa Falls Tuff. The second eruption, known as the Mesa Falls Tuff, occurred about 1.3 million years ago, creating Henry's Fork Caldera, situated in eastern Idaho's Island Park area, west of Yellowstone National Park. This eruption released over 280 cubic kilometers of ash, spreading across Wyoming and much of Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas. When you compare the Henry's Fork Caldera to the Island Park Caldera, the Henry's Fork Caldera is significantly smaller. The Island Park Caldera, on the other hand, is much larger and has an oval shape, stretching well into Yellowstone Park. Despite being smaller, the Henry's Fork Caldera is still substantial, measuring 18 miles in length and 23 miles in width. Its curved rim is easily seen from various spots in the Island Park area. Among the various calderas created by the Yellowstone hotspot, Henry's Fork Caldera is the only one presently visible, a part of a series of supervolcanoes and calderas that shaped the Snake River Plain. Lava Creek eruption. The most recent is the third major eruption in Yellowstone's history. The Lava Creek eruption happened approximately 630,000 years ago and resulted in the creation of the Yellowstone Caldera. This eruption is seen as the most significant event in Yellowstone's third cycle of volcanic activity. It spread over an area of more than 7,500 square kilometers, focused on the caldera. It is estimated to have a magma volume of about 1,000 cubic kilometers. Even though it didn't release as much stuff as the Huckleberry Ridge eruption, it still threw out a lot of material, covering a large area. Besides the magma and other volcanic stuff, a huge amount of volcanic ash and gas was forcefully thrown out. The dense tuff formation created by this eruption is visible at different spots in Yellowstone National Park, such as Tuff Cliff along the Gibbon River, Virginia Cascade, and along U.S. Highway 20. Sadly, the harmful effects of this eruption weren't limited to just Yellowstone National Park. The magma and volcanic debris spread over most of the United States. Surprisingly, some of the debris reached as far as Louisiana, which is thousands of miles away from Wyoming. Effects of eruptions. In the past, eruptions of the Yellowstone supervolcano unleashed massive amounts of volcanic ash, gas, magma, and other debris that blanketed most of the continental U.S. Some of this material has even been discovered as far away as Louisiana. After that, the land collapsed and formed a hole now known as the Yellowstone Caldera, Helens pulling in trees, mountains, and everything else in its surroundings. Scientists emphasize that the last Yellowstone eruption was a staggering 1,000 times more powerful than the infamous 1980 Mount Helens eruption, which claimed 56 lives and countless animals and destroyed large land areas in Washington and Oregon. When Yellowstone erupted, a dangerous mix of hot ash, melted rock, and deadly gases shot up high into the sky. This event likely covered about a third of the continent in total darkness. Fast flows of hot, dry rock and gases rushed across the area quickly, covering or breaking everything in their path. The melted rock, known as magma, burned the once beautiful land for many kilometers. To date, we can still see signs of this terrible thing happening in Yellowstone. The Yellowstone Caldera, which is like a big crater, is 50 kilometers wide and 70 kilometers long. Earthquakes in Yellowstone. Lately, there have been more earthquakes in Yellowstone, between 1,000 and 3,000 each year. These quakes tell scientists about the magma under the ground. There's a magma lake below the surface called the magma chamber. The quakes show if more magma is going into this chamber. It's hard to say for sure what these quakes mean for Yellowstone. People can't predict what the volcano will do next, but they study its past to understand it better. Geologists have kept a close eye on the height of the Yellowstone Plateau. It's going up at a rate of as much as 150 millimeters per year. This helps them understand changes in the pressure of the magma chamber indirectly. Upcoming threat. Between 2004 and 2008, the floor of the Yellowstone Caldera went up by about 75 millimeters every year. This upward movement was more than 3 times higher than any measurements taken since they started in 1923. In that period, the land inside the caldera rose to 8 inches at the White Lake GPS station. By January 2010, the United States Geological Survey mentioned that the uplift had slowed down significantly. Even though it continues, it's at a slower pace. Scientists from the USGS, University of Utah, and National Park Service, working with the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, say they don't see any signs that a huge eruption like in the past will happen at Yellowstone soon. They also mention that the time between these events is not regular or predictable. The ground at Yellowstone is still going up, showing increased volcanic activity. Because of this, the park officials closed it to keep people safe in case of an eruption. If a big eruption happens, it might be necessary to evacuate whole cities and towns nearby. Even states might have to move away from the park, but it's not guaranteed to work well. A massive Yellowstone explosion could be so dangerous that few or no states in the U.S. would be safe. Unlikely eruption. Officials of the United States Geological Survey say a massive eruption, like the last one, is an unlikely scenario, and the most likely activities that might take place in the future are eruptions of steam and hot water rather than molten rock or lava flows. Although lava flows are a type of magmatic eruption, they are not as devastating as caldera-forming explosions. Instead of instant destruction, lava flows slowly ooze out of the ground for days, months, or even years. The last Yellowstone lava flows took place about 70,000 years ago, making them a very rare occurrence. Yet even today, hikers can see evidence of those eruptions in the form of distinct rock layers along the park's trails. Some evidence of younger lava flows can be found near the cliffs surrounding the Upper Geyser Basin near the park's most popular tourist attraction, Old Faithful. Today, Yellowstone sleeps, with scientists checking its every hiccup or cough to predict its next move. While the brewing force beneath the park has been restrained for thousands of years, Yellowstone's dormancy does not mean it will not one day awaken. The question remains, when and with what force? Safety measures. Visitors to Yellowstone are warned because the water there is risky. They're told to stay on the paths and not touch hot springs or geysers. Some tiny creatures, called thermophiles, love the hot and acidic water, and although they are too tiny to be seen with the human eye, they create beautiful colors in the water. Also, the park faces the danger of forest fires every year. In 1988, a huge fire destroyed a third of the park. If the hidden magma under Yellowstone bursts through, everything in its way will be destroyed. That's why the park officials close it whenever there's even a small sign of an eruption. If Yellowstone erupts, it will release a lot of ash and gases, affecting the weather worldwide. It might even cause the extinction of species found only in America. The whole planet would be in trouble, and surviving civilizations would need a long time to recover from the impacts of the volcanic eruptions. Unfortunately, except for evacuating the entire continent, there isn't much that can be done to avoid the devastating impacts of a Yellowstone eruption. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting videos.